We've done point guards, we've done shooting guards, we just did small forwards, and now today we are chugging along. We are going to be ranking NBA power forwards into a tier list. So what is going on, everybody? The power forward position is pretty weird right now. A lot of small forwards have kind of transitioned into a stretch four, and I was kind of surprised by the amount of power forwards that are playing under 20 minutes a night, because that is their criteria for this tier list. You're going to be featured in it is if you played more than 50% of your minutes this year at that position. For today, it's power forwards, and you are averaging at least 20 minutes a night. There is one player that's averaging like 19 and a half minutes that I did include here because I would have felt a little mean leaving him off. We'll get to him later. And if you guys do enjoy these tier lists, I would appreciate you dropping a thumbs up. We're going to finish off this week with centers, obviously, just wrap out the positional tier list, and then we're going to do teams and rookies. So this could just be the tier list week, and you guys will get that Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday. And if you guys are enjoying these, I would appreciate you dropping a thumbs up, like I said. So let's get into this. Where we're going to start off with Aaron Gordon. Obviously, I'm going to just reiterate this. I'm basically comparing him to everybody else in this video. He's better than a lot of players in the NBA. He's better than a lot of power forwards, basically every power forward that's playing under 20 minutes a night. That's not even featured in this video. But for Aaron Gordon, I think compared to everybody here, I think it's safe to put him in B tier. He was such an important piece on the Denver Nuggets championship team, and I think any team would want him for his defensive versatility and what he could be as an offensive player, but he is still limited in areas of the game. There's a chance I move him up to A tier by the end of the video if I feel like there's like a lack of top guys. But for now, he is a B tier power forward. I think Bobby Portis is probably good enough for a C tier power forward. Do I think he's better than Aaron Gordon? No. Do I think he could be in the same tier as him? Yes. So there's a chance he gets maybe upgraded by the end of this video. All right, Bojan Bogdanovic. He's a really good offensive player, and I do think he's better than Bobby Portis. It's funny because I just watched him play live against the 76ers last Friday night, and I don't know if this has always been a thing with Bojan throughout his career, but he gets so mad after every possession. Basically, anything that doesn't go his way or the team's way, he is just yelling. I don't know if that's just a this year Pistons thing, or he's done that in Brooklyn, Indiana, and Utah in the past. But I think I'm going to put Bojan Bogdanovic in the B tier. I do think he's better than Bobby Portis, but that is probably where the line is right now. Like, do I think Bobby Portis should be in B tier? But I do think Bojan Bogdanovic would flourish on a good team. It sucks that he's on Detroit right now. And it's also such a small sample size for him. He's only played in 7 games this year. And also, this is just this year. So anything that's gone on in the 23-24 season, I don't really care what happened last year or what I'm projected going forward. Cameron Johnson got paid last offseason. I think he's been a fine stretch for this year. Nothing crazy, but still a good player nonetheless. Christian Wood, I think I'm going to drop him in a D tier. He's a fine offensive backup big. He should not be a starter. Maybe by the end of this video, I'll just rename the tiers, but not a good defender at all. I think he's a D tier power forward compared to everybody else in this video. David Roddy, he's been asked to do a lot this year for Memphis. I think he's a D tier power forward as well. We may get a decent amount of D and F tiers today. So those are basically like bench power forwards, and then Fs are like end of the bench, maybe shouldn't even be in a rotation. Dean Wade, one of those guys I don't think should be in a rotation. The Cavs don't necessarily have a deep team. They do have 3 power forwards in this video. I don't think Dean Wade's a really good player. I think if he's your 9th man or 10th man in your rotation, fine, and that's what this tier basically is, but I do not think he would be like a top 8 guy on a really good team. Dorian Finney-Smith is really good, man. I think like if we were talking, I don't know, we could maybe put him in B tier because he's a good defender and he's actually been a very good floor spacer this year. I know he's currently dealing with an injury in Brooklyn, but I'm gonna leave him in C tier with Cam Johnson and Bobby Portis. I like where this tier list is at right now. I think if we were going to maybe drop Bojan into C tier, sure, but I think this is a pretty good barometer for C tier, D tier, F tier, and B tier. Next up is Draymond Green, who, in my opinion, this year has probably been like B tier on defense, C tier on offense, but just all the suspensions on what he's done to Yusuf Nurkic and Rudy Gobert this year is going to be sidelined for the next 3 weeks, has not been a good team player in that sense. He's a D tier power forward. Yep, he is much better than he's better than everybody in this tier list besides I think Aaron Gordon. I think Aaron Gordon's maybe the only power forward I would take over Draymond Green. But this year, just what he's done on the floor that's led to some suspensions, that's going to warrant a D tier in my opinion. Evan Mobley's been good. He didn't maybe take that offensive leap that I would have liked, but he's still a really good defender. He's going to be hurt for a little bit, so he may lead off B tier. There's a chance I move him into the A tier because I do think he's better than Aaron Gordon, at least defensively. Aaron Gordon maybe provides you a little bit more floor spacing, but Aaron Gordon hasn't been that good of a shooter this season. I don't know, though. I think Evan Mobley might be an A tier power forward just because of how much I value his elite defense, and he's a good enough offensive player where I don't think that should really hurt him too much from not being in the A tier, but obviously he's going to be hurt going forward, so that's going to be tough to rank. The Cavs have an A tier power forward, and they're going to have 2 F tier power forwards. I am not a fan of Georges Niang. I think he got kind of overpaid last offseason, aka the minivan. I don't like his defense, and if he's not hitting his threes, he's not very useful on the floor because he's a lot slower than everybody else. So yeah, him and D Wade, we got 2 Cavs F tier power forwards. Next up, we have Giannis Antetokounmpo, who's going to be in the MVP race, so that is an easy S tier. He is arguably the best player in the NBA, so that was a very easy decision to make. Next up, we have Grant Williams, who I think has been a phenomenal role player for the Dallas Mavericks this year. I don't think he's maybe as good as Aaron Gordon or Bojan Bogdanovic, so I'm going to drop him in the C tier, but it's been a great signing for Dallas. They did a phenomenal job picking him up with their mid-level exception. And then we got Harrison Barnes, who I think is also a C tier power forward. He's transitioned from a 3 to a 4 this year, and Keegan Murray's been more of the 3 for them. And yeah, I'm going to go with Harrison Barnes in the C tier. I do think he's better than Christian Wood and David Roddy. Obviously, he's better than Draymond offensively, but yeah, Draymond would be probably here or here if it wasn't for the suspensions this year, but I'm only looking at this year. Yeah, that might cause some hate in the comments, but I'm going to stand by it. All right, next up, we have Hayward Highsmith, who I do think is a tier below the guys in C tier. He's a fine player. He's a good hustle player for the Heat, but I do wonder if he would have as prominent of a role as he does on the Heat than with other teams. The Heat are a team that doesn't have a very deep bench, but obviously they develop their talent pretty well. He provides them some useful minutes, and he's a good backup power forward, and I think that's pretty much what the D tier is. Next up, we have Isaiah Livers. I mean, just this year, I like Isaiah Livers as a player, but he is struggling and is not a great player this year on arguably one of the worst teams of all time. So I'm sorry, Isaiah Livers. You're in the F tier. I do think you'd be fine on most teams with Isaiah Stewart as your starting power forward if he was like your 4th or 5th scoring option in your starting lineup. And I do think he's been one of the better players on the Pistons this year. So yeah, the Pistons have 3 power forwards in Bojan, Stewart, and Livers. Livers is an F. If you wanted to drop Stewart, I do think Stewart, though, is better than Highsmith, Roddy, and Christian Wood this year. Obviously, once again, I'll reiterate, Draymond's only in there for the suspensions. But yeah, I think Stewart's a C tier. I actually really like how this tier list is going. All right, next up, we have Jabari Smith Jr., who, in my opinion, is a C tier power forward. I think he's right along in that tier with guys like Isaiah Stewart, Dorian Finney-Smith, Bobby Portis, Grant Williams. He's been very good in year 2 for Houston, and I'm excited about his career development. He was never going to be a superstar. He was never going to be maybe as good as Paolo Banchero right away, but he has definitely shown progression in year 2. Next up, we got J-Dub, Jalen Williams. He is a B tier power forward for me. I do think he's better than Bojan Bogdanovic. I think it's very close. Obviously, Jalen Williams is on the better team. Bojan's maybe has to do a lot more as like the number 1, number 2 there with Cade, but I think Jalen Williams is just as good as Bojan and Aaron Gordon this year, and I do think he's better than every single player in C tier, and I'm loving this tier list so far. I think I'm doing a very good job. Jason Tatum, super easy decision. S tier power forward. He's been more of the 4. Jaylen Brown was in the small forward video, Derek White in the shooting guard video, and Drew Holiday in the point guard video. I think Derek White might have been in the point guard video as well. But either way, Jason Tatum, S tier power forward, going to be in the MVP conversation. He's on the best player on the best team this year. All right, next up, we have Jeremy Grant, who, in my opinion, has been an A tier power forward. He's actually been very good for Portland this year. Has it translated into wins? No. So if you wanted to dock him to B tier for that, I wouldn't argue, but I think he's been good enough offensively and defensively individually where he's been an A tier power forward. I think maybe I don't know if I'm overvaluing Evan Mobley's defense too much, because next up we have Jimmy Butler, and I do feel like Butler is a tier below Tatum and Giannis. I know he just hit a nice game winner against the Bulls the other night, but do I feel like he belongs in that tier with Tatum and Giannis, or do I want to maybe just bump down Jeremy Grant and Evan Mobley? See, now this is where I'm going to present like a challenge to myself, because I was really loving the way this tier list was looking. But you know what? I think if we're going to put like 5 power forwards in S tier, Jimmy Butler belongs at least as one of those 5. So next up, we have John Collins of the Utah Jazz. And I think John Collins is a fair C tier power forward. He's not somebody that's going to win you a ton of games. He's not an elite defender. I think the Jazz are actually pretty unhappy with his role there, but I think he would start on most teams in the league. And I think he's good enough to be in the C tier. Jonathan Kuminga is an interesting one. Man, Kuminga, do I want to put him in D tier? I think I may leave him in C tier. He's going to have to, like, this is his time to shine with Draymond. It looks like he's going to be suspended indefinitely, at least for the next, like, 3 weeks at the minimum, Shams did report. So this would be Kuminga's time to shine. I do think he would start on most teams, and I do think he's better than everybody in D tier. That's basically Highsmith, Wood, and Roddy. All right, Julius Randle, I'm going to put in B tier. I think all right, I'm a Knicks fan, so I feel like I could say this. He is too inconsistent at times. There was like nights, yeah, like the Bucks, like first 3/4 of the in-season tournament first leg, he was phenomenal. But there's too many times this year where he shoots the Knicks out of games. He doesn't get back on defense. He doesn't make the extra pass. He tries to play hero ball. There's too many things wrong with Julius Randle's game. Yes, he's going to put up nice box score numbers and counting stats, but I don't think he's that much of a winning player. And yeah, there's times he's going to go off and have a nice offensive game. But in my opinion, he's more of a B tier power forward and then A tier power forward this year, and he's not I think as good this year than he is in previous years. Karl-Anthony Towns got off to an abysmal start this season, but he has been playing very well as of late, and he's the starting power forward on the best team in the Western Conference. He is just as an A tier, but it's tough. This is now where it gets tricky, because I do like Cat maybe as much as Jimmy Butler, and Butler's a better player, but this year, that's all I'm looking at. He's probably been just as good as Butler, but Butler's providing at least something on the defensive end as the true number one. So for now, I'm going to leave it like that. KD, obviously an S tier power forward. I think he's been arguably better than Tatum individually this season. He's carried the Suns team that has had just a plethora of injuries, and he should be in the MVP conversation as well. Maybe not up there with like Giannis, Jokic, Luka, and Tatum and Shea, but I think he's right there, probably in that like 5 to 7 range. Okay, Kevin Love was the guy I mentioned earlier in this video that was averaging around like 19 minutes a night. I don't think Kevin Love is obviously as good as he used to be. Nobody thinks that. And I don't know if he would have as prominent on a role with other teams than he does on the Heat. I think he's a fine backup power forward, but he's been giving them sometimes starting power forward minutes if they move Butler to the 3 at times. And yeah, I think Love is more of a backup 4. I think he's a D tier power forward at this point in his career. I think Kyle Anderson at this point also is a D tier power forward. I do think at this point, Kyle Anderson is a D tier power forward. I would probably take everybody in C tier over Kyle Anderson, but I do think he's a very valuable backup 4 because he's a good leader and he could do a bunch of little things well also. So I think he's probably the better power forward in D tier besides Draymond, but I'm going to set that bar. I could move him up to C tier by the end of the video. Kyle Kuzma has been good this year, even though the Wizards have been horrible. He could actually go for a decent amount at the deadline. He's actually been somewhat efficient this year too. I didn't think he was going to be this efficient. So he's a B tier power forward for me. Okay, we are going to throw Lauri Markkanen into the 8 tier power forward conversation. You can make an argument he's better than Karl-Anthony Towns, but hey, the Timberwolves are a lot better than the Jazz. Obviously, they have a better team around him. But if I'm going to throw Jeremy Grant in A tier, I definitely have to throw Markkanen in A tier. Toumani Camara is a nice young player. He was featured in the Drew Holiday, Damian Lillard trade, the 3-teamer back in September. I do think he's got like some promise to him, and I think he's got more potential than some of these guys in D tier, but he's going to be in there. I think he would be a backup power forward on some teams. Like I have seen flashes from him in Portland this year, and has been way better than expected. I'm just not taking him over anybody in C tier, and there's maybe even argument for F tier. All right, LeBron James. This is an easy S tier. He is probably right ahead of Jimmy, right behind Jason Tatum. So this may be the S tier. I wanted 5 guys in there. There's maybe somebody else. Oh, wow. The power forward position right now is actually loaded. Way more loaded than small forward was. Obi Toppin, C tier. The Pacers are using him perfectly. This is the role, what he should have been doing in New York, but Tibbs just wanted him to be a spot-up 3-point shooter in the corner. Doesn't make any sense. And obviously it helps playing with Tyrese Haliburton, one of the best facilitators in the league. I think Paolo Banchero has been phenomenal this year. I do think he's been better at times than Jeremy Grant and Evan Mobley, so I do think he's an 8 tier power forward. I don't know if I want more than 5 power forwards in the top 3 tiers. That could make it a little bit interesting because we still have guys like Pascal Siakam, Paul George, Zion Williamson, and Victor Wembanyama left. So I'm going to save those guys for last, and we're going to make this interesting. So yeah, next up we have Patrick Williams, who was off to just such a brutal start this season. He's been a lot better since he got moved to the bench, and now he's been splitting more time in the starting lineup, playing more than 30 minutes a night. So I think he's arguably just as fine as Kuminga and Toppin this year. So I think it would be disrespectful if I put him in D tier. PJ Washington, I don't know. He got off to such a good start, and this may be hating on him, but he's never really been that efficient in his career, and I don't think his play style translates to wins. I think he'd be a fine backup power forward, and that's what this D tier is. So yeah, I'm going to settle with PJ Washington in D tier. I know he has higher points per game than basically some guys in C tier, but I don't think it's translating to wins. He's not like an elite defender, and he hasn't been efficient. Man, I think Santi Aldama is better than arguably like Obi Toppin or Kuminga as well, so I think I'm going to throw him in C tier. His efficiency is okay as well. I do think he's been asked to do way more than he should. I don't know though. If I drop Aldama to D tier, and I think he's a good backup, which I do, and that's what he's been pretty much at times for the Grizzlies. He shouldn't be though. They've had a plethora of injuries this year. Do I drop Williams and Kuminga down to D tier. But then I feel like these guys are way better than Monty Kamara. Okay, I was really liking my tier list in the beginning of the video. All right, so maybe I'll bump up BJ Washington and Aldama for now, and then we'll get back to it. Tari Eason, I think has been, well, he's missed a bunch of time. Good defender, good hustle player. I think I'm fine with him as my starting power forward just because maybe he's not going to fill up the stat sheet, but he's going to really, I think, impact the game when he's on the floor. He's going to play defense. He's going to hustle. He can make the extra pass. He can offensive rebound. He can defend. Yeah, I think I'm going to keep him in C tier. Tobias Harris, I think, is a fine power forward at this point. I think he's pretty similar at times to like Cam Johnson or Grant Williams or Bobby Portis. He's a good scorer. I think I know what I'm going to end up doing because, like I said, I'm going to make this a challenge. I'm going to drop some guys from maybe the top 3 tiers. I'm just going to keep 5 in S, A, and B. Taurean Prince has been a nice 3 and D power forward for the Lakers this year. He has played a ton for them, probably giving them way more minutes than they thought when they signed him. I think he's also a C tier power forward for sure, better than Christian Wood. So now this is where it's going to get interesting. We have Wemby, Zion, Pascal Siakam, and Paul George. So Wembanyama has been inefficient this year at times, but he's been an elite defender and he's had some real good games. He's also 19, but I'm not looking at this in the future. It's just what they've done this season. And it obviously hasn't translated to wins, but you can make an argument he's had a better year than Evan Mobley. So I think what I'm going to do is at least throw Wemby in B tier. I'm going to drop Bojan Bogdanovic for now. You're on one of the worst teams ever. He's a good offensive player, but if I'm only going to do 5 in B tier, he's getting dropped to C. All right, in my opinion, this is where it's going to get tough. So we have Zion, Siakam, and George. If I had to rank these 3, it would go Paul George 1, Zion 2, Siakam 3. So if we were going to do that, I think if I moved up Paul George into S tier with Jimmy Butler and LeBron, I think I would drop Jimmy to A tier. Okay, so I think what I would do is I would drop Jimmy to A tier. I would probably drop out of all of these 3. Oh, man, between Grant, Mobley, and Paolo. This is tough, man. Okay, so I think Siakam would definitely be thrown into B tier. He's not been the scorer he's used to be. I think out of all these guys here, it's really tough who I want to keep in B tier. I think it would be between Aaron Gordon, Kuzma, and J-Dub. I think Wemby, Randall, and Siakam would have a spot here. I think Zion belongs in A tier because I think Zion's having a better year than Jeremy Grant. And you can make an argument over Paolo and Mobley. I think Paolo needs to be. So if I was going to drop somebody, it'd probably be Evan Mobley into B tier. And then I think with Wemby, yeah, Randall, Siakam. And then I got to drop Grant into B tier. So I think by process of elimination, just on this year, oh man, it's tough. So I think I actually may drop, oh man, this is really tough. I think I'm going to drop Kuzma. He's a very good player. He's better than Bojan Bogdanovic in my opinion this year. He's been way more efficient than I thought he'd be. But I'm taking the other 4 in B tier. And to be, oh man, wait, I got to drop, never mind. I got to drop Gordon and J-Dub. I think I'm going to put Jeremy Grant in B tier. That may be a hot take. So if I didn't want to make it a challenge on myself, I would just probably throw Jimmy up there. I'd probably keep Mobley in the A tier. And then I would just probably put these 3 back, maybe even these 4 back into B tier, and I'd be happy with that. So let me know what you guys think of this tier list in the comments below. Do you think I'm being harsh on anybody in D tier or F tier? I think I'm cool with F tier. I think you can even put maybe Mobley Kamara down a tier, even Haywood Highsmith if you wanted to. But I think he's been fun enough defensively. Draymond would probably be in B tier just because of his defensive value, but all the suspensions this year. C tier is definitely flooded. If I were going to drop anybody from C tier, it would probably be Patrick Williams, PJ Washington, Aldama, maybe Tari Eason. I think I'd probably keep Obi over Taurean Prince, but it's close. I like B tier, I like A tier, and I like S tier. So yeah, thank you all for watching. I love you guys. Drop a like if you guys did enjoy. I'll leave a link to this tier list in the description below. I made it myself. You can make a tier list yourself, and then let me know on Twitter. My Twitter link is also in the description below, and I'll see you guys in the center tier list video. That one should be fun. It's going to be very tough, and I'll see y'all there. Peace.